Hello and welcome to this lecture series on microprocessors and microcontrollers. In this first lecture, I shall give the complete outline of this course. In other words, the course content. But before that, I shall give you some important background information so that you have a clear-cut objective or perspective about this course. In this lecture, I shall cover these topics. So here is the outline of this lecture. So outline of this lecture on introduction and course outline. First, I shall give the historical background and discuss in nutshell how the microprocessor and microcontrollers originated or came into existence. And as we shall see, Moore's law will come into the picture, and particularly the role of Moore's law in the development of microprocessor will be discussed. Then evolution of IC technology, how the integrated circuit technology has evolved over the years. Then evolution tree of microprocessors, and I shall discuss key features of microprocessors and microcontrollers, which are responsible for widespread use of microprocessors and microcontrollers. Then I shall discuss typical applications of microprocessors and microcontrollers, and we shall see that this development led to some educational need, and we shall discuss the educational need of this particular subject, and finally I shall give the course outline. So let us start with historical background. In the year 1947, there was invention of transistor. As you know, William Shockley and his colleagues in Bell Laboratories invented transistor in the year 1947. That ushered in a new era in electronic industry, particularly after the invention of transistor, and after few years transistors were commercially available. And as transistors were commercially available, each and every electronic circuit started bearing the symbol solid state, signifying the conquest of this important device over its rival vacuum tube. As you know, in those days, before in 1940s, all the electronic circuits were realized by using vacuum tubes. Vacuum tubes were bulky, consumed lots of power, were very unreliable. So there were many advantages. So this invention of transistor revolutionized everything, and very soon lots of R&D efforts were put in the area of solid state. Basic idea was some semiconductor devices like germanium and silicon can be used to realize electronic circuit. The basic theory behind that was that this semiconductor material can carry current, and its current can be controlled by adding small amount of impurities. That was the basic theory behind the invention of transistor. Then very soon in 1959 there was another important invention, that was invention of integrated circuit. Some scientists in National Semiconductor in Fairchild developed the planar technology of transistor, and planar technology ultimately led to the invention of integrated circuit. What is integrated circuit? An integrated circuit is one in which a number of transistors or components can be fabricated on a single silicon wafer. That is an integrated circuit. And in 1959 it started, and very soon the rate at which the integrated circuit progressed was very phenomenal, and particularly sometime in 1965, Gordon Moore wrote an article. This is the article, Cramming More Components onto Integrated Circuits. And in 1965, after about 8 years of the invention of integrated circuit, Gordon Moore was asked to predict the future of solid state circuits in the next 10 years. That means what will happen in the year 1975. So what he did, he wrote an article, Cramming More Components onto Integrated Circuits for electronics, and it appeared in the issue April 19, 1965. So in his article, he presented a curve based on very few data. First one is, first data is here, 1959. That is when the IC technology was invented in Texas Instruments. And few integrated circuits, 3 integrated circuits already manufactured in Fairchild in those days in his company. As I mentioned, that time Gordon Moore was Director Research and Development Laboratories, Fairchild Semiconductor. So they were manufacturing integrated circuits. So this is the data of 3 integrated circuits which were available in those days. And they were planning another integrated circuit which was to appear in 1956. So this particular IC was having 32 transistors. That was in 1965. And another IC was supposed to be marketed by Fairchild in the year 1966. That was having 64 transistors. So these are the few points, and based on which he made an important prediction, and prediction was by 1975 the number of components per integrated circuit for minimum cost will be 65,000. What was the basis of this prediction? He simply extrapolated this curve to the year 1975, and in the 1975 he found that this is on this side, on the left side, the plot is log 2 of the number of components per integrated function. So this is the log 2 curve of the number of transistors, and on this side number the year of production. And he found that this point corresponds to 65,000 transistors. And in 1975 he wrote an article in International Electronic Device Meeting in 1975, and in that article he found that his prediction that 65,000 transistors will be in the IC was still satisfied. That means after 10 years he found that his prediction was satisfied, and in those days in 1975 65,000 transistor dynamic RAM was in production. So dynamic RAM was in production, so that prediction came true. Now after that, sometime in 1995, Moore again revisited the his prediction. Initially his prediction was in 1965. Whenever he originally predicted the growth of integrated circuit, his prediction was that component density would double every year. Then in 1975, whenever he revisited, as I said, his theory, then he found that it is necessary to modify. So in 1975 he modified his prediction and he said that component density that is the number of transistors per IC would double not every year but every 18 months. Now that was in 1975. Again in 1995, that was after 30 years of his proposal, he revisited revisited the same topic and tried to find out what is the status, whether it is still following his prediction. And he compared two types of devices. One is the microprocessor evolution, particularly different microprocessors that was manufactured by Intel starting from 1971 to 1998. And as you can see on this side, it is the number of years, and on this side the number of transistors per die, that is your in the log linear curve. This is a log, and in this side the linear curve. So in this, still he found that it is a linear curve in this log linear plot, and his prediction is still satisfied, not only for microprocessors but for DRAM technology also. The same rate has been followed. So this was a remarkable development, and this particular development is really very amazing, the rate at which the ICs were developed. And as I mentioned, let us now go back again to the history. So that was Moore's law. And in between, in the year 1971, the first microprocessor was developed based on IC technology. As I mentioned, in 1959, integrated circuit was developed. Then Moore's law, birth of Moore's law took place in the year 1965. And in 1971, the first microprocessor based on the integrated circuit was developed by Intel. And this particular device is 4004. You may be asking, what do you mean by microprocessor? By microprocessor, we mean all the components that you find in a CPU, central processing unit, ALU, arithmetic and logic unit, resistors, timing and control unit, along with interface hardware for connecting external devices like memory and IO devices. Everything can be put together on an IC, integrated circuit. That means the complete CPU comprising arithmetic and logic unit, some resistors, timing and control unit can be fabricated on an IC. So this microprocessor can be considered as a CPU on a chip. So in that particular device was coined the name microprocessor, and it was essentially a 4-bit microprocessor, 4004. Then not only Intel but other integrated circuit manufacturers like Texas Instruments, then your Fairchild and other companies, Intel, Texas Instruments, Motorola, they joined the race of producing more and more powerful microprocessor. Why? The reason was, although this 4004 microprocessor was intended for making a calculator, and it was found that not only it can be used in making a calculator, but it has the potential for as a general purpose building block of any intelligent electronic system. That means any intelligent electronic system can be developed based on this device. So that was the basis for its popularity. And as a consequence, many other manufacturers joined the race of producing microprocessor. And very soon, the microcontroller was also proposed in the year 1976, again by Intel, 8048. What is microcomputer? A microcomputer is somewhat different in the sense not only the CPU but random access memory, read-only memory, some I/O ports, timer counter, serial ports, all are put together on a single chip. So we can say that microcontroller is nothing but a computer on a chip. So in 1976, that was the first microcontroller that was developed by Intel, known as 8048. So this is the brief history. But based on the Moore's law, the integrated circuit technology progressed very rapidly, leading to different types of products. Let us see what happened because of the evolution of IC technology. So 1947, that was essentially the invention of transistor. And this is the year, as I mentioned, transistor was invented, having, we can say that only one transistor per device, and there was no product. Then in between 1950 and 1960, some discrete components were available. Discrete components, essentially transistors, were available, having only one transistor. Different types of transistors were available in the market, and the typical products available in those days were junction diodes and transistors. Then, as I said, in the year 1959, integrated circuits were developed, and the integrated circuits were classified into, based on the number of transistors per chip, they were classified into small scale integrated circuits, medium scale integrated circuits, and so on. So this 1961 to 1965 is the era of SSI. SSI stands for small scale integration, having about 10 transistors per IC, and typical products based on this SSI technology are planar devices, logic gates. These are essentially based on planar technology, flip-flops. Then, as the number of transistors per chip increased, the technology moved to medium scale integration, MSI era, having about 100 to 1000 transistors. Here it is 10 to 100 transistors. So MSI, medium scale integration, integrated circuits were having about 100 to 1000 transistors per IC, and these were typical products were counters, multiplexers, decoders, and adders, etc. Then, as I said, in 1971, microprocessor was invented, and in the era of LSI, large scale integration, with transistors having 1000 to about 20,000 transistors. And typical products were 8-bit microprocessor, random access memory, read-only memory, and after that, from the year 1980 to 1984, can be considered the era of very large scale integration, VLSI, very large scale integration. And during this period, ICs were having 20,000 to 50,000 transistors. And typical devices manufactured in those days were digital signal processing ICs, RISC processors, then 16-bit and 32-bit microprocessors. These were the typical product of the VLSI era. And beyond 1985, we can consider the era of ultra large scale ULSI, or ultra large scale integration. So greater than 50,000 transistor per IC. And in this period, we got 64-bit microprocessor, and so we can say that in the VLSI era, we have developed very powerful microprocessors and other devices. So this is how the integrated circuit technology has evolved over the years. Now let us see how the microprocessor tree has evolved during this period. This is the evolution tree of microprocessors. As we know, the first microprocessor that was introduced in 1971 by Intel was 4004. That was a 4-bit microprocessor. Then very soon other microprocessors were introduced, like 8008, 8080, 8085. This 8085 was introduced. So this was essentially 1971. This was 1976. Around the same time, that microcontroller was introduced here, 8048. And as you can see, this microprocessor tree has got 3 distinct branches. The main branch, we can say this is the main branch. This main branch essentially produced general purpose microprocessor. General purpose microprocessors which are typically used for making computers. So this in this direction we got gradually 8086, 8088, 80286, 80386. I am listing only the Intel microprocessors, but there were other manufacturers like Texas Instruments, Motorola. I am not mentioning about them because Intel series gives you a complete picture. 80386, 80486, then your Pentium. Then came the RISC microprocessors, and you can see here as the microprocessors are the microprocessor tree is growing, it is moving from 4-bit to 8-bit. Here, that starting from 8008, these are all 8-bit. Then from 8086, it is 16-bit. Then from 80386, it is 32-bit. Then recently, we have got other processors, say for Itanium, which is a 64-bit microprocessor. Not only the number of bits in the microprocessor increased, but its processing power also increased significantly. For example, lots of parallelism were incorporated in these microprocessors, which are essentially the central processing units. Pipelining were incorporated to increase the performance. Then superscalar architecture were incorporated, where you have got several processors, several ALUs, which can be executed in parallel. Then cache memory was made on chip, starting from 80486 on chip cache memory, and various other features which were present in the mainframe computers of 70s and 80s were incorporated in these microprocessors. Then can be RISC processors and so on. So as you can see here, in this branch we got very powerful central processing units which can be used for making computers, powerful computers. The other branch, which are essentially microcontroller branch. In the microcontroller, as I mentioned, you have got not only the CPU, but RAM, ROM, some I/O ports, timer counter, and serial ports were incorporated. And this is in this second branch, essentially microcontroller branch, you have got this also progressed. For example, 8048 that was introduced in 1976, then 8051 in 1980, then 8086. Not 8096, and various other microcontrollers were introduced gradually, which were used for making essentially embedded systems. What about the third branch? This third branch is essentially for special purpose processors. What are these special purpose processors? Like DSPs, digital signal processing ICs, microprocessors. For example, Intel introduced 2920, then Texas Instruments introduced TMS 320, and NEC introduced MuPD 7720, and so on. Apart from the digital signal processing ICs, which are necessary for implementing very powerful signal processing circuits, were used in many special purpose equipment. Similarly, later on, communication processors were also introduced, COM processor. For example, Intel introduced the Intel IXP 7XX series. Presently 750 and other devices are available. These Intel IXP series of microprocessors are designed for packet processing. As you know, nowadays there is a lot of communication equipments are manufactured which can use these communication processors, and for example devices like switches, routers, intrusion detectors, and so on. This kind of device communication equipments can be built by using these communication processors. So you see, in the microprocessor tree has grown and it has become a very big tree, with general purpose processors in the main branch, microcontrollers in the second branch, and special purpose processors in the third branch, and with different kinds of applications. Now let us try to understand what is the typical features of these microprocessors and microcontrollers which made them so popular, so useful in making different types of equipments. First feature is small size. As I mentioned, Moore predicted that the packaging density will double every year. Initially, he predicted that. Then, of course, he revised his theory and he proposed that the packaging density will double every 18 months and processing power also will double 18 months. So, this small size, which is the key of this age of miniaturization, started with this small size. So, these miniaturized devices can be used to make very small portable equipments. So, small size is very important feature of these microprocessors. So, the term micro can be attributed to the small size. Similarly, the cost is also coming down even with the increased complexity of the device. In fact, if you look at the Moore's law, what is said that the number of components per integrated circuit for minimum cost. As you can see here, the number of transistors per IC will increase and it will give you some kind of minimum cost. So, the cost of production is reduced in spite of the fact the complexity is increasing. For example, the lower cost is plotted here. Say starting from 1965 to 2001 it is shown. As you can see, the cost, this is the curve which is showing the cost reduction, which is also following the Moore's law. So, this is the linear and this is the logarithmic curve, and this curve is linear, that this is log linear plot essentially. So, here in the initial years of transistors, the cost of a single transistor was about $10. Cost of a transistor in US dollar. So, little less than $10. Then it was $1 in 60s, 1/10 of dollar in 70s, 1/100th of dollar in 80s, 1,000th of dollar in early 80s and 90s, and present in nowadays the cost of a single transistor is 1/10 millionth of a dollar. So, you can see the cost of a single transistor is reducing at a very high rate. So, you can say that the microprocessors and microcontrollers are having micro size, micro cost. However, they are very reliable. The reliability is coming from the basic feature or basic property of integrated circuits. Because these are integrated circuits, the complexity, with the increase in complexity, the reliability does not decrease. The reliability depends on the die size, and as the number of transistors per die is increasing, so with increasing complexity, reliability is not decreasing. In other words, compared to vacuum tube and discrete components, the microprocessors and microcontrollers provide very high reliability. Then comes the power consumption. The microprocessors, based on the present day CMOS technology on silicon, consumes very small power. So, the power consumption of these devices are very small. However, these micro features does not give you micro performance. The microprocessors and microcontrollers are essentially computers or stored program computers. That means the programmability feature provides the flexibility and versatility. That means keeping the same hardware by adding different types of software, you can use the same microprocessor based system for different applications. In other words, you can use it for numerous applications just by changing the software, keeping the same hardware. So this stored program feature gives it very high versatility. Then the power. Then the microprocessors, as I mentioned, the power of the microprocessor is increasing over the years. For example, let us look at this card. The first microprocessor that was introduced in 1971, 4004, was having only 2250 transistors. Nowadays, the Pentium, which was produced in 2000, has got 42 million transistors. So you can see, if we assume that the processing power or performance is roughly proportional to the number of transistors, you can see how the performance of the microprocessors has increased over the years. For example, from 1971 to 2000, it is about 3 decades. In 3 decades, it has increased several orders of magnitude. So, because of the use of number of transistors from say 2250 to 42 million. So we can say that the microprocessors are having gradually becoming more and more powerful. So these are the typical features which has made microprocessors and microcontrollers very very popular and used in numerous applications. Now let us look at the typical applications of microprocessors, where microprocessors should be used. First of all, let us focus on this main branch of microprocessors, general purpose branch. In this general purpose branch, as I said, the microprocessors are essentially CPU, and more powerful CPU have been manufactured, and by using those microprocessors, you can build desktop computers, or you can say PCs, then laptops, workstations, servers, supercomputers, we can say that fruit of this main branch are the powerful computers in the form of desktops, PCs, laptops, workstations, servers, and supercomputers. And these are the development. These are based on the powerful microprocessors available based on this main branch of microprocessors. And as I mentioned, presently we are in the era of 32-bit or 64-bit microprocessors. So you have servers, workstation based on either 32-bit microprocessors or 64-bit microprocessors. So this is the typical applications of general purpose microprocessors. What about the left branch, microcontroller branch? This microcontroller branch are essentially used for making embedded systems, microcontrollers, which are typically used embedded systems. What is an embedded system? An embedded system is nothing but a combination of hardware and software designed for some specific applications. As you have seen, these general purpose computers can be used for numerous general purpose applications. On the other hand, microcontrollers are used for implementing embedded systems, which are essentially used for some specific applications. For example, they can be used for in consumer electronics, for making toys, cameras, camcorders, and as you know, presently you are going to get more sophisticated and powerful toy like robots, which can do household works and various other things. Then you are going to get various consumer products based on these microcontrollers, like washing machines, then microwave, ovens, and so on. We can make a big list. Then it can be used in instrumentation. You can make intelligent instruments based on these microcontrollers. What are the intelligent instruments? Like oscilloscopes and various medical equipment, medical instruments for patient care, which can be used in intensive care units and so on. And these microcontrollers can also be used in process control. Process control for data acquisition, and control in various industries, in steel industry and various other industries. Then presently there is a big use in communication. For example, microcontrollers can be used to make products like say telephone sets, handsets, answering machine, answering machines, cordless phones, and so on. Similarly, you can use it in offices, office equipment like fax machines, printers, small PABX, and so on. And presently there is an emerging multimedia applications. For example, these microcontrollers can be used in making cellular cell phones, PDAs, and teleconferencing equipment. Teleconferencing equipment. Finally, let us come to the third branch of the tree, microprocessor tree, which are essentially special purpose microprocessors. Which can be used for making various signal processing equipments. Presently, we are using various multimedia appliances where you can use those DSP processors and the communication equipments can be used for making, as I said, for making switches, routers, intrusion detection, and various other applications. Now the question arises, we have such a huge tree of microprocessors. It has evolved into a very big tree. How do we teach the students? How do we expose them to all the areas? Obviously, it's a very difficult task. Let us look at the main branch, where these microprocessors belonging to the main branch will be taught. Usually, these microprocessors are introduced, are taught as part of computer architecture and organization course, where typically the features like pipelining, superscalar architecture, and various other features are introduced, and these microprocessors are given as examples. Similarly, the special purpose processors are taught in those specialized courses like digital signal processing. In digital signal processing course, these DSP chips are taught, and those routers, switches, those network processors can be taught as part of maybe computer network course, a specialized course on computer network, whatever the left branch. And in fact, the main objective of this course is this branch, embedded applications. As I mentioned, there are numerous applications, and there is no, it can be a very big list. And question is how this particular subject should be taught to the students. This has created an educational need. In case of general purpose microcomputers, where the cost of the computer is quite high, usually it is designed by a group of experts. Unfortunately, this cannot be done in case of embedded systems or microcontroller based systems, where a single engineer has to emulate the role of a team of experts. He should be hardware designer, because he should know how different subsystems, microcontroller, transducers, and various peripherals can be put together to build a complete system. So he must be a hardware designer, he must be a software designer, and also system integrator. So in case of general purpose computer, as I mentioned, you can have a group of experts like logic designer, memory designer, systems programmer, and so on. But here all the three functions or roles has to be performed by one person, so he must be 3 in 1. So he should be able to design the hardware, he should be able to write the software and integrate the system, and so that a low cost equipment can be made. And that has created a tremendous education and need, and this is the main objective of this course. So in this course, we shall try to cover these various aspects, and let me give you a brief outline of the course. So in the microprocessor part, we shall discuss architecture and organization of microprocessor. Particularly, we shall introduce the 8085 as an example, because this is one of the most popular microprocessor which can be easily introduced to the students. And we shall also discuss the instruction set architecture. The instruction set architecture essentially is a view of the programmer, and this is the programmer's view of the processor. and through the instruction set he learns what can be done. Then using these instructions, which are nothing which can be considered as the vocabulary of the machine, we shall discuss assembly language programming, which are typically used in implementing embedded systems. Then, as I mentioned, we have to do some kind of hardware integration. So we shall discuss in detail interfacing of memory devices, data transfer techniques, so that different types of input-output devices can be used using different types of data transfer. And input-output devices are introduced, will be interfaced through I/O ports. So we shall discuss how the I/O ports work, how the I/O ports can be programmed, then interfacing of various input-output devices which are commonly used in microprocessor-based systems like keyboard, LED displays, and so on. Then we shall discuss building complete microprocessor-based systems. That means putting hardware and software together, a complete application. Similarly, in the microcontroller side, we shall again discuss the architecture and organization of microcontrollers, and we shall consider in detail the instruction set of 8051, which is the most popular 8-bit microcontroller even today. And we shall discuss 8051 assembly language programming. Although 8051 has got built-in RAM and ROM, it will be necessary to interface external memories. So I shall discuss interfacing of external memories. I shall also discuss interfacing of keyboard and LED displays, which are typically needed for making microcontroller-based system. Particularly, this subject, interfacing of actuators and transducers, are very important in embedded systems. Different types of transducers and actuators, like transducers for pressure, temperature, and various common parameters will be discussed, and how those transducers and actuators like relays can be interfaced to the microcontroller will be discussed. Then the timer counter operations, which are very important in the context of microcontrollers, will be discussed. However, developing a microprocessor-based system or a microcontroller-based system without any hardware and software aid is very difficult. So we shall discuss development aids and troubleshooting techniques which are commonly used in developing microprocessors and microcontroller-based systems. And of course, we shall discuss several application examples. So this gives you an overview of the course outline, and from next lecture onwards, in the next class, we shall discuss the architecture and organization of microprocessors. Thank you.